Boom. All right, so I've been working on this new world for VRChat, and this is my first day trying it with my Quest, and I'm using Airlink, which seems to be pretty good. I'm not getting any lag in here, and this is a fairly complex world of animations and things. But we're going to take a little hang glider flight through it. So just to show you around. So there's the hang glider up there. And these alien homes kind of act as kind of a hangar for hang gliders. You won't find them unless you find your way into the world, but here we are. A little world that's kind of a play off of one of my first virtual reality worlds called Where Spheres Touch. In this case, it's called Where Spheres Bounce, and you can see why. There's a number of spheres bouncing around in here, and things get pretty lively sometimes when they start knocking around. It feels like sometimes you're in the middle of a pinball machine game of some kind, but there is a collider on them, so if, you can sort of bounce off of them and affect them. Normally, of course, the computer computes an identical path every time this program runs. These spheres will fall and bounce around in exactly the same way every single time. And what's interesting is that as soon as a human interacts with it, if you're down on the ground and you headbutt one of these spheres, it sends all of them into a different trajectory. So you're altering basically the course of history as soon as you touch one of these things. Or fly into one. Like, they will bounce off us. Like if I fly underneath this one here, it should bounce off of us as soon as we hit it. Let's just see. Yeah, boom. See? Now, sometimes if you're not in a flying machine like this hang glider, it'll knock you across the world. It's amazing. So I've got lots of things going on in this world. I'm going to go up really high. I'm going to just give you a good overview of what's going on here. There's these alien homes, like I said, that house the hang gliders, and where you can spawn more of them. You can spawn as many as you want. I've limited the world to 8 people at a time, just because we had some problems the other day, and I wasn't sure why the bandwidth was, or the frame rate was dropping so much. But I think what it was is that there's a platform here. If we look up a bit, you see that green platform? It's coming on down now. But it was literally catching spheres underneath it, and it was creating a massive data overload as the sphere and the platform conflicted with itself. And so what I have now with that animation is that platform goes up, but as it comes down, I remove the collider so that there's no way that a sphere can get caught at the bottom and sandwiched in between the landscape and the platform. So things are getting pretty lively here, as you can see. The fractal, it's what we call a skybox in virtual worlds, is a single image that I generated with Sandbase's Fractal Universe program. And I actually used this image in my Tranquility Dreambase world. So some people will be familiar with it. I also tried to put a universe inside a sphere here, which you can see. Whole universe inside that sphere. Yeah, in general, there's a lot going on in here. But I'm going to take you to the spawn point, which is over here. So when you first come into VRChat, you really do need a link, though. This is not particularly Quest friendly at all. So either a link or you know, a tethered headset of some kind. But yeah, let's just stop here. I'll jump out. When you first arrive, you arrive inside this fractal cave on a translucent, I just call it a gesture form I created in Gravity Sketch. So there's a lot going on here. There's an animated ship coming in here for a landing. It takes you on an automated tour if you want, and you can see it's just going to it's going to come in and make its way in, and it'll come to a soft landing over here somewhere. Now the world itself is based on my latest album of music. A lot of people know that I'm a musician and composer. And this latest album I just completed, number 64, 2021, Before Completion. And that's, if you look in the upper right-hand corner, there's a hexagram showing up, which is based on the Book of Changes, the I Ching Book of Changes. And I don't know, it just struck me as a 64th album that I would call it Before Completion, which is the name of that hexagram. The QR code in the left, I think, takes you to dreamscaping.com, which is my website. So here's this really cool looking car I created. I don't know if you recognize the model that it was, it's a distortion of, basically. But we can spawn a car by just hitting this capsule. And if you look here, it says flying car, dual drive. Special thanks to Syncork for use of his free flyers. Been using them for a long time, and he was generous enough to donate them to VRChat for developers and builders to use. So if I click that, up comes another one. And this one's controllable. The other one is an animation. It's a little rough. But this one you can actually get inside and sit down in the front seat and carry passengers in the back. So there's room in the back for 3, and there's room over here for a co-pilot. So that's pretty cool. And I don't know whether, I'll leave it to you to guess which model car this is based on, but it's one of those cars that has a lot of front end real estate, and it's compact. But yeah, let's take this one for a run. So we grab the 2 controllers and off we go. Now, if I take the trigger off of the left hand, we'll go slower, which is nice. And we can look, oh yeah, look at that. Look at that down there. Yeah, that's a Mindstone cactus that I made years ago and photogrammed it into here. That's pretty cool. That turned out all right. I'm just coming in and checking these things out, verify that everything's working. But yeah, check that out. There's another Mind Stone. I put a number of Mind Stones in here. Mind Stones were stones psychedelic stones that I painted generally in the 70s. But I did a few later on, and I've got the first and the last Mind Stone in here. And I put one up on the top of that mountain over there. You can see it. This one I've often referred to as Artifact from the Future because it has hieroglyphics and drawings from cave paintings on it, as well as my own designs. Oh, we've got a sphere in our way here. I don't know if we're going to get through it. We have to go around it. Oh, we're over it. Okay. Here we go. All right. So we can go inside the stone. I've inverted the texture map on it, so when we go inside, we'll get a kind of an inside look at it. Just go there. Yeah, here we are inside the Mind Stone, which is kind of a unique perspective. And there you can see the cave paintings and things. The notion here was that, 10,000 years from now when they dig up this stone, it'll be like archaeologists today digging up caves and seeing cave paintings, but they'll see some of my art and wonder, what were they doing like 10,000 years ago? What were they thinking? And artists tend to leave impressions of the world behind. So whatever that is, that net of abstractions I call it, basically attempting to demonstrate that we're of an age now where we realize that there's just as much space within solid objects as there is between stars, the atoms, subatomic particles that make up matter. So, you know, very much in continuing the theme of my world's cosmology is kind of a mix of psychedelia. There's some, it's basically psychedelia, I'd say, by and large. That and a dream analogy. Dream analogy, virtual reality as it relates to being very dreamlike. Obviously, you can be in worlds that are in a waking state. It's like a lucid dream. Virtual reality is fundamentally a lucid dream. Okay, so down there you can see the first Mind Stone embedded in that little valley down there. We'll just fly down to that. I'm on a very slow path here as we're flying, just so you can see. You can see the lighting changing as well. So that's altering the colors in real time as we fly around. And yeah, in general, this world is in constant transformation. One of the main areas in here, let me see if I can get oriented. I orient myself with, there we go. Off in the distance we can see the spawn point, but we can also see this little building over here. And this is where oh, look at that. The platform is lifting that sphere. There's a rarity. Look at that. Wow. So that's going to fall off of there. And as a result, when it comes down, there it goes, and it's connected to that other little sphere. So when that hits, yeah, we're going to get some ping-ponging going on. And that's going to take off, and it's going to affect all the other ones. So it's quite interesting to watch the interactions of the spheres in here. So, but let's come in for a landing down here. And I'm having a little fun here with that logo. I'm sure a lot of you recognize, or sort of make it kind of looks like something, but I've just called it Not Vegan Recordings. These are recordings that I've done over the years inside this building. So let's just pop out of the ship here. So, yeah. So I do a lot of the play off of artifacts from the future, and I'm Artist3d, but that's AKA Paul Marcano. So these are my albums. So as we come in here, we've got sort of a little entry area, and I've got these sound rooms, which I haven't quite figured out how I'm going to. I'll probably put. Well, this cover art here that we're seeing is from Eclipse of the Mind, which is an album I'll show you shortly. Then we have like posters. We have our my little piece of artwork done from my Burkastle builds in Utah. And then I have a wanted poster here. Wanted cloud gazers, $100 a day, future of work. Just a question I've always had, and it says here basically that once robots are properly acknowledged for their contributions to the workforce, and they're finally legislated to pay income tax on their earnings, just like the rest of us, there'll be a revenue stream to accommodate the future of work, and ads like this will become commonplace, okay? In this case, in the future, you'll probably need a suitable recording equipment, 4K or better, to take pictures of clouds and create a big database. So yeah, we literally would redefine what work is in the future, and one of them would be cloud gazing. Let's face it, I mean, there's a lot of things happening in the clouds that get missed by most people who are stuck inside all day working. So I think there's definitely room to expand the definition of work. So welcome to the music sampling store. I've got music videos there, which if you walk up to the coast here, there's a proximity. hear the soundtrack. There's a bubble, an audio bubble here that just allows you to hear music from the videos. And then throughout the store, I've got my albums that I've done over the years broken up into decades. And you can see I was pretty prolific in from 2010 to 2019. Recorded a lot of albums, collaborated with a lot of people, and ended up with a lot of tunes. Samplers. Occasionally, I put together an album like this, Sampler's Breakfast, where if you pick it up, you turn it over, and you just click on it, and you hear samples of each tune. Okay, and there's about I think it's a 12-second little sample of each recording. And this is local, so you could have multiple people in here listening to the albums and they wouldn't be interfering with each other. So this is a very local audio file, and it disappears if you get any kind of distance from it. So, just generally it's only audible for a very short distance. So, yeah, you put those things there. And of course you can purchase the album if you like it. It's $9.95. And I make a little note here that did you know that streaming music services pay musicians 0.004 of a cent royalty for each play? That's 4/100ths of a cent for each play. When you have a Spotify account or an iTunes account and you listen to a song, musicians aren't really making any money there. If you like an album, your purchase at $9.95 is actually equivalent to 248,750 of those streams. So clearly, you're supporting artists and musicians by actually purchasing an album now and again. So just wanted to point that out in here, because that's the nature of how digital has affected musicians, and that's why you see so many concerts and basically T-shirts and lunch boxes and what have you, instead of the actual music itself. But got a full selection of things here. This is the 90s. This was the decade of the 90s. Not all my stuff is represented here, but these are the albums I thought felt past the test of time, so to speak. So also over here, for instance, this is my first recording device, which was a Sony TC630. And I recorded my earliest work in the 70s and started treating my work with respect and created projects. But yeah, fundamentally throughout the 70s I was doing sound on sound recordings, which is basically layering something on the left side of a channel and then porting it over to the right side and adding another track and then porting it back, and back and forth you go until you ended up with a layered multi-track mono recording as a final product, which was a bit limited, but for home recording and people who couldn't afford $400 an hour in the studio, that was a good way to approach things. So yeah, you can literally listen to the earliest of my recordings here by just picking up this Time and a Space for Everyone.
Cloud formation.
So I don't know whether 12 seconds is enough to sample an album, but given the sheer number of albums and the size of audio files, I had to economize, so I thought maybe 12 seconds would be enough. Now in the 80s, of course, I was using in my first stereo recording device, which was a TAC 144. And as far as I know, there were only, far as I know, I was one of the first to actually press a vinyl record from this TIAC. And that's where Islands in Space came into being. And this album was pressed, okay, direct from a master that I created off of that 4-track. And this has recently been reissued in 2016 by That Kind of Lost Records in person, Spain. Yeah, hopefully you're hearing some of that. So as we were looking at, this was actually the first recording. Silent Circuits is the first recording that I actually did with in stereo, and I was so excited about it. If you listen to Silent Circuits, you hear a lot of panning back and forth of sound and things. But the 80s were pretty prolific too, so I look at that and I think, well, yeah, I was certainly excited to get a recording device that could handle stereo. And there's a very unusual album here called Conscious Circuits. And this thing was made from a toy guitar, a little Yamaha toy guitar. And it just had the most unusual sound. And a lot of this actually this album led to cuts that I ended up using on 10,001 Dreams, which was also released on vinyl recently. So yeah, I'm not afraid to plagiarize myself, you know, as time goes on. And yeah, around around here is when I got playing keyboard. So you do see a lot of instrumental albums that start to show up here, with this one and this one. Then I got back into a little bit of songwriting for Return of the Comet, which that was the year Halley's Comet came by. There's a song called Cool Comet, number 7. And yeah, I was a big fan of Mark Twain and his relationship with the comet. I don't know whether anyone's ever seen the claymation, The Adventures of Mark Twain, but it's really by Will Vinton. Really cool. And then Crosswinds Through the Forest. That would have been a time when we moved from Goldstream Park on Vancouver Island. That would have been the last album of the decade there. Yeah, and then there's a little upstairs thing here. There's an early shot of me in the mushroom fields of Vancouver. That was recently used in a mushroom foraging book of some kind, or something. I'm not sure whether it was a foraging book or just an information book on mushrooms. But back in those days, in British Columbia, magic mushrooms were legal. So people were out in the fields and enjoying the sunshine and you know, having a few revelations every now and again. And there's my potted plant again. And then in the first decade of the 2000s, that's a little something that a few recordings I did in the first 10 years of 2000. Of particular interest is this live album, Aztec Rising, which was done in active worlds. I actually recorded a live concert with basically avatar puppeteering. That you know, so this album, this had a lot of impact at the time. The virtual concerts were new, right? So Edge Radio
coming to a virtual world near you.
Saturday, April 22nd.
Active Burns. Worlds Universe. Aztec Rising. Aztec Rising. The virtual reality band. 10:30 p.m. VRT, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. A virtual live performance in a virtual environment. We're rocking the metaverse and the internet right here on The Edge and live.
So that's a very rare live album, or semi-live. I'd have to go into detail to explain how that was made to sound live, let's put it that way. And I've got just some historical kind of things that I've thought every now and again. Yeah, so here's the little record sampling store, and I got a QR code there that probably goes to dreamscaping.com. And yeah, so the videos continue to play on a loop there from YouTube. It's just basically a little music place. And as we come out here, things continue to evolve. And as we make our way into the world, you start to hear again the actual album, my latest album, which this world is kind of dedicated to. So, yeah. So we can actually headbutt this thing and change its direction and just jump up, yeah. And send that off on its own little sort of trajectory. So I hope you've enjoyed this little tour and give you a little taste of my latest virtual reality world. It's basically now open for access by the public. And yeah, this is a little taste of what we're up to. VRChat.